You ever look at somebody and wonder how in the world they're still standing after everything they've been through? That's India, that's Bharat. People have been sleeping on India for centuries, thought she was soft, thought she was just incense smoke and elephants, Bollywood songs and yoga mats. But let me say this loud and clear today. India isn't weak, she isn't fragile. She's power wrapped in patience, thunder tucked behind silence, a lion that doesn't roar until the moment demands it. You can't crush something that's already been through the fire and come out refined like gold. India has been invaded, plundered, colonized and split apart, yet she never shattered. Empires rose and fell, swords clashed, flags changed, but Bharat's soul stayed steady and unbroken. When your spirit is forged through struggle, your spine doesn't bend easily. That's why you can't crush Bharat. Strength isn't always about who's the loudest in the room or who flexes hardest on the global stage. Sometimes power is quiet. Sometimes it's discipline, preparation, and grit done in silence. India has been building while the world stayed busy, doubting. She didn't make noise. She didn't shout every achievement from the rooftops. But now the world is starting to notice, and some folks are getting uneasy. Let's talk about power. Not just military power, though we can go there too, but real power. Economic muscle, technological growth, space missions, nuclear capability, global diplomacy, self-reliance. That's layered power. That's not a one-punch knockout, that's endurance, that's resilience. You crush weak things. India isn't weak, she has depth, cultural depth, strategic depth, historical depth, economic depth, every layer built tough. They once said India would never rise, said she was too poor, too divided, too backward. And yet the same country they doubted is launching satellites on budgets smaller than a Hollywood blockbuster. The same country they claimed would collapse under its diversity is holding together over 1 billion voices in one democratic system. That isn't chaos. That's coordination on a scale most nations can't even imagine. Don't mistake kindness for weakness. Don't confuse calm with cowardice. Don't mix culture with fragility. India carries a strength that doesn't need to shout to prove itself. Its strength built over 10,000 years of civilization, longer than most modern nations have even existed. Ancient wisdom blended with modern fire. You ever notice when storms hit, it's the shallow-rooted trees that fall first? The ones with deep roots bend, sway, but they don't snap. That's India, rooted in faith, philosophy, family, and identity. Bharat is like a banyan tree, and the deeper the roots, the harder it is to uproot. You can throw sanctions, propaganda, intimidation, but that foundation won't shake. Some people don't like India's rise. They're uncomfortable seeing a brown-skinned ancient civilization standing shoulder to shoulder with global superpowers. So they push narratives, stir division. But the truth is simple. They're scared. Scared because India doesn't want to dominate the world, but she refuses to be dominated ever again. Scared because India isn't playing games. She walks with dignity, but her fists are clenched, ready if tested. India's military speaks for itself. One of the largest standing forces on the planet. Nuclear power, ballistic missiles, hypersonic programs, indigenous fighter jets, a navy capable of securing the Indian Ocean. She seeks peace, but if war reaches her doorstep, she knows how to answer. You don't poke a tiger and expect no claws. But the real strength isn't just in weapons, it's in the people, the farmer, the soldier, the scientist, the entrepreneur. Hustle runs through their veins, they grind, they rise before sunrise, sleep after midnight, and keep pushing forward. From villages in Uttar Pradesh to tech corridors in Bengaluru, they're driven by progress. You can't stop a people who believe in their own rise. What truly makes Bharat indestructible is unity in diversity. Over 2,000 ethnic groups, hundreds of languages, every major religion finding a home. That could have destroyed a nation. Instead, India turned it into her identity. Differences didn't divide her, they defined her. Chaos transformed into one of the world's most complex democracies. Then there's the fire of the youth. India is one of the youngest nations on earth, more than 65% under the age of 35. That's not just a number, that's a storm forming. They're coding, creating, building billion-dollar companies from chai stalls and dorm rooms. A nation that studies ancient texts while building artificial intelligence can't be crushed. This is the land of the Mahabharata and Mars missions, the land of Buddha and breakthroughs. The place that gave the world zero and now delivers unicorn startups. From spiritual insight to scientific innovation, India isn't catching up. She's leapfrogging, and that unsettles those who expected her to stay behind. You ever see the quiet person at the gym? No noise, no flexing, just showing up every day, adding weight to the bar, silent, consistent. Then one day they lift something that makes everyone stop and stare. That's Bharat. Decades of preparation, decades of growth, now stepping fully into her strength. People try to fracture her spirit, caste, religion, language, politics. But India has endured far worse. Empires tried to erase her, colonizers tried to rewrite her story, yet she remains, still breathing, still standing. You can't destroy something that has faced extinction and still risen. Real power doesn't always look like a sword. Sometimes it looks like a woman walking miles just to vote, like a child studying under a streetlight, like a doctor serving in a remote village. That's India's real strength, the will of her people. Character sustains power. Weapons rust, walls fall, but character endures. India has character. She doesn't invade, she doesn't colonize, she defends, she uplifts. That sense of dharma, that moral grounding, is what makes her unconquerable. A nation that fights for truth and dignity doesn't crumble easily. India isn't just the future, she's the present. One of the largest economies by purchasing power, among the fastest growing major economies, manufacturing, IT, defense, agriculture, all rising. Investors are watching, alliances are shifting. The global balance is changing because India stopped waiting for validation and started writing her own destiny. India doesn't need to imitate anyone. She isn't trying to be the West or replicate China. She's authoring her own story in her own ink. When you walk in your truth, you don't need permission. This is a land where the Ganges flows and rockets soar, where prayers rise in temples and code is written in cafes. This isn't soft power, it's soulful power. Power that outlasts trends, silences doubt, and outworks everyone in the room. Let critics talk, let skeptics scoff. While they doubt, Bharat builds. Roads through mountains, missions to the moon, millions lifted from poverty, records broken in sport, space, and science. Momentum fueled by millions of dreams moving together can't be crushed. India doesn't just survive, she transforms. Challenges become fuel, setbacks become setups, scars turn into symbols. She isn't a victim, she's a warrior with grace. In a world obsessed with noise and domination, Bharat proves that true power is balance, humility, and purpose. That's why India's power is different. That's why it lasts. It's not just external, it's internal, an unshakable spirit. You can't crush that. You can't silence that. You can't defeat a dream rooted this deep. Bharat doesn't bow anymore. She stands tall, fierce, ready. And for anyone still doubting, hear this clearly. India isn't waiting for recognition. She already knows her worth. And the moment you know your worth, nobody can break you. Nobody can crush Bharat. It's not the size, it's not even the weapons. It's the spirit. It's the fire that refuses to go out, even when the winds of the world blow hard against it. And Bharat, Hindustan, she carries that spirit in her very bones. A quiet, stubborn flame that refuses to die, no matter how many times history tried to stamp it out. You ever seen a nation hold centuries of pain on its shoulders and still smile with dignity? That's Bharat. And that's why no one can crush her. When strength comes from deep within, no outside force is strong enough to break you. You have to go far back to understand this kind of strength. Bharat isn't some new experiment. She isn't a fresh idea searching for identity. No, this land has walked the earth with purpose since the dawn of civilization, from the Indus Valley to the Vedas, from Ashoka to Chandragupta, from Bhagat Singh to Abdul Kalam. The spirit of Bharat has flowed like the Ganga, steady, sacred, unstoppable. You can knock her down, but she never stays down. She rises, always. Her cultural roots run deeper than oceans. Every grain of soil holds memory. Every temple, every fort, every song, every story whispers history. This is a nation that has seen everything, lost almost everything, and still protected what truly mattered. When you talk about culture, tradition, and soul, India isn't a chapter. She's the whole library. But don't mistake that depth for being stuck in the past. The magic of Bharat is that she carries her past on her shoulders while sprinting toward the future. It's like watching a classical dancer perform ancient steps on a digital stage. Tradition fused with transformation. Roots paired with wings. That's Bharat. In a world obsessed with trends, India stands out because she doesn't chase what fades. She builds what lasts. You want to know how a country survives centuries of invasion, betrayal, and exploitation without losing its values? With belief, with identity, with inner discipline, India cracked that code. Mughal invasions, British colonization, partition, terrorism, political corruption, border tensions, economic hardship, name it, she endured it. And look at her now, standing tall, soaring forward, not just healing, but growing. Not just joining global conversations, but shaping them. That spirit of Bharat lives in her people. You see it in the woman running a chai stall under a scorching sun, still feeding a hungry child without asking anything back. You see it in the farmer who wakes before dawn to sow seeds he may never harvest himself. You see it in the soldier guarding the border with a smile even when death stands nearby. You see it in the child studying under a flickering streetlight, dreaming beyond the limits of his village. That isn't just hustle, that's heritage. That's perseverance passed down through generations. That's power born from survival. And now that quiet confidence is rising. Not loud, not arrogant, but undeniable. You can see it in how Indians walk today. Chin a little higher, eyes sharper. That colonial shadow is fading. The inferiority they were taught is cracking apart. Because India isn't just producing engineers and doctors anymore. She's producing leaders, creators, innovators, thinkers, visionaries. She's no longer content working behind the scenes. She's stepping into the spotlight without asking permission. Look at how India handled COVID-19. Look at how she manufactured vaccines, not only for herself but for dozens of nations. That wasn't just capacity. That was compassion. That was responsibility on a global scale. Leadership rooted in Dharma, doing what's right, not just what's profitable. India doesn't rise by crushing others. She rises by lifting others along the way. That's what separates her. That's what gives her moral weight. And that's what makes her uncrushable. When a nation's strength flows from its culture and spiritual core, it becomes something you can't measure with numbers or GDP charts. You have to feel it. Walk her streets at dawn. Hear the prayers rising before sunrise. Taste food cooked by hands carrying generations of stories. Watch festivals light up the night sky with colors no camera can fully capture. That soul, that spirit, is the unbreakable thread tying her past to her future. And Bharat doesn't just survive pain, she transforms it. Every wound becomes wisdom. Every betrayal turns into awareness. Every tragedy becomes poetry. India doesn't just heal herself, she shows the world how healing looks. You see it in her music, her films, her literature. You see it in how even the poorest household will share their last meal with a stranger. That's a kind of strength the world often misunderstands. But it's real, loud in silence, powerful in patience. India's confidence today isn't born from arrogance. It's born from remembrance. For too long, the world told her who she was, For too long, she believed the lie. But now, she's remembering the knowledge of her sages, the courage of her warriors, the sacrifice of her freedom fighters, the science of her ancestors. And once you remember who you are, you move differently, you speak differently, you stop begging for a seat at the table and start building your own. The modern Indian carries ancient empires in his blood and future innovation in his hands. Bharat codes the future while preserving scripture. She builds space missions while singing lullabies sung for centuries. That balance, that duality, is where her uncrushable power lives. She isn't one-dimensional. She isn't predictable. She's silence and strength, fire and forgiveness, past and progress perfectly intertwined. Faith plays a role too, not just religious faith, but faith in life, in justice, in karma, in the belief that truth always prevails. Satyameva Jayate isn't just a phrase, it's etched into the Indian soul. That belief carried her through every storm. Empires collapsed, colonizers fled, but Bharat kept walking, kept believing, kept rising. Want to see real power? Watch how India uplifts herself without destroying others, how she shelters refugees, how she respects other cultures while standing firmly in her own identity. That's strength with character, and strength rooted in love, not fear, becomes untouchable. Every Indian child born today carries more than a name. They carry legacy, dreams of freedom fighters, blessings of sages, prayers of mothers. And they carry it with confidence, with skill, with purpose. They're no longer ashamed of their accent or their brown skin. They say, "This is who I am," and they say it proudly. That confidence is exactly why Bharat cannot be crushed. India's rise doesn't depend on approval. She's done waiting for validation. She's moved past proving herself to the world. Now she's proving herself to herself. And when that happens, that's when true awakening begins. India doesn't shout. She lets her work speak, from Chandrayaan to startups in Hyderabad, from defense corridors in Tamil Nadu to green energy fields in Gujarat. She's moving, fast but grounded, bold enough to be noticed, humble enough to be respected, fierce enough to be feared if pushed. When you understand the fire burning in a billion hearts, hearts that were told for generations they weren't enough, you realize this isn't just a country, it's a movement, a wave, a revolution unfolding slowly, gaining unstoppable momentum. You can't crush momentum built over centuries. You can't stop a train that's been waiting at the platform for ages once the whistle finally blows. Bharat is uncrushable because she chooses hope over hate, because she builds more than she breaks, because she prays before she punishes, because she forgives but never forgets. She knows the cost of freedom. She understands the weight of history, but she refuses to let that history cage her future. She writes her own story, in her own language, with her own ink, on her own terms, and that kind of power, rooted, rising, radiant power, doesn't bend, it doesn't break, it doesn't fade, it stays.